All right, buddy, welcome back to a brand new video here on the second channel. And today we're going to be looking at the top 8 decks from the Merida Regional Championships this past weekend. I know I usually do a video where I look at the entirety of day 2 and then I talk about the top 8. But for the most part, I wanted to look at the top 8 in this video because it's important to talk about what did good in the tournament. The results were definitely a lot more interesting than I expected them to be. And also with EUIC just a few short weeks away, I think it's still important to look at the top 8 and analyze and talk about what decks did good, why the decks did good, and maybe why some decks weren't as popular in top 8 as they really could have been. We're going to talk about all that here in today's video because I'm going to be in attendance at UIC, so I'm definitely excited to kind of talk about these decks and kind of see what does well, because these results are going to have a direct impact on what's good, what's popular at UIC. And then, I'm sure we'll get the rest of the day 2 very soon here, and I can talk about all that in the next video here, because I'm sure there were some cool things in day 2 here at Merida in the Budu format. But yeah, if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 21,000 subscribers, and if you want to enjoy the video, leave a like and all that good stuff, and let's get into it now. So, we did see Azul take down the tournament with Miraidon. Azul's playing Miraidon on his stream just before he left for the tournament, and he ended up winning the regional with it. Miraidon, though, was really well positioned for Merida, mainly because it has a good matchup against the 3 big decks for this tournament. There was Lugia, Gardevoir, Dragonapult. Those were the 3 most popular decks, in my opinion. If you look at the day 2 graph, I'm sure they were going to be popular. I think Miraidon probably would have been number 3 actually on the day 2 graph, or the day 1 graph, I should say. I think Miraidon definitely would have been very popular on the day 1 graph, but yeah, crazy thing, Miraidon won the tournament. Not surprised to see it. It just, Iron Hands is just a very strong attacker, right? The deck uses Iron Hands really effectively. It's interesting because you'd think Miraidon was going to fall off because of Budu, right? They Budu you can't play your electric generators, and then your deck can't function, but Miraidon is still really good. One thing with the Azul's list is he plays the Rotom V in the deck. And the Rotom's really cool because in this format, a lot of the time the opponent's making you go first, because if you're playing against the deck using Budu, they want to go second, right? So they can immediately Itchy Pollen you. And the thing is, you go first with Miraidon, you get to use Rotom to set up for an even better turn 2. Which is what makes the Rotom so strong, gives you a more explosive turn 2. It basically punishes your opponent for making you go first, which is really, really powerful. Miraidon sometimes doesn't mind going first, mainly because, you get more energy in play that way, right? You have an extra turn to put energy on the board, so you have a better chance of getting that turn 2 Iron Hands EX. The thing with Miraidon is that it sometimes is really tough to beat because it just gets that turn 1 attack off with that Iron Hands EX, and sometimes it's really hard to recover from a turn 1 Ampy very much. That's just what makes this deck so good. It's just Iron Hands is just a ridiculously broken card. I know Lugia was really good too, playing Iron Hands, but Lugia has a bad Miraidon matchup where Miraidon beats Lugia and it can beat the other 2 big decks, right? And you got the Raikou still in there, the Raichu. Going down to 1 Raikou, not really relying on the Area 0 as much anymore to make your Raikou the main attacker. Only 2 Area 0s in his list here. Also plays the 1 Forest Seal Stone, but has the 16 Lightning. Really just wanted to try to capitalize on as much energy as you can so that your generators are getting energy more often than not. And then obviously still playing the Secret Box, which is still probably the best ace spec, right? It gets you everything at once, but it also gets to thin out your deck, which makes your generators have a higher chance of getting 2 energies. So Miraidon looking pretty good heading into Merida, or for EYC, sorry. Is it going to be the best deck for EYC? Maybe. We'll talk about more of that later, I guess, in a future video. But crazy thing is, we saw Gouging Fire in the finals. Now, I did a video on Gouging Fire last week on the channel, on the main channel, and I was like, this deck is secretly underrated right now, and I got some comments of people saying, no, it's not, this deck actually sucks. Well, joke's on you haters, it almost won the regionals. Haha, take that. But no, for real though, jokes aside, Gouging Fire is actually a pretty decent deck. A lot of people look at it as like a big basic deck like Miraidon or Raging Bolt. They look at it in that same vein where you're just going fast and running your opponent over. It's not really what Gouging Fire tries to do. It's a little bit more of a slower deck, and it has different plays and lines that other turbo decks really don't have. Mainly when you have cards like Monkey Dory in the deck, the Flutter Mane, the Entei V, and the Delphox V, especially being a very strong card within the deck to make some surprise plays happen out of nowhere. It's interesting too, Gouging Fire in theory should be favored versus Miraidon, because your main attackers, Entei and Gouging Fire, have 230 HP. Azul's list did not play a Zapdos in the deck, so he had no way to hit those 230 numbers without trying to use Raikou or potentially Raichu to take the knockout. But the deck itself is a bit more slower paced, right? It does play 3 Boss, 1 Roxanne, 4 Sada. We see the Secret Box as the ace spec to help set up your board, the 4 Basin, the 6 Fire, the 2 Dark. And the Monkey Dory is really cool because obviously you use Magma Basin, you Magma Basin into your Gouging Fire, you put the 20 on it, and then you Monkey Dory that damage off and put it on another Pokemon. And in total, it makes Gouging Fire's attack go from doing 260 damage all the way to 280, which is obviously better numbers to hit. Also, Gouging Fire is a very efficient attacker, right? Just needing the Sod and the Basin to be powered up in one turn with an attachment is pretty good. And then Monkey Dory can also help you against Dragapult EX, giving you a better time against the Phantom Dive spam. Yeah, and the Delphox kind of the big play. We see 3 E-Switch in the deck because you can make a Delphox combo play out of nowhere. Delphox attack is really good against single prize decks. So they don't put a mana fee down, or if they don't even play mana fee, you can take 2 prizes out of nowhere. Also, really good against Lugia. You can take out their Cinchinos and Minchinos before they evolve, which is another really good thing that the Delphox is able to do in the Lugia matchup, which Lugia's a pretty good matchup because Gouging Fire can one-shot Lugia thanks to Monkey Dory, and then Delphox can be really good at taking out the Cinchinos. Sometimes even Delphox can kill the Archeops in rare occasions when you get more spread damage off. But for the most part, it's really good at taking out the Cinchinos and stuff, making a very efficient attacker in that matchup. Really cool stuff. I don't know if Gouging Fire is going to be like a more popular deck going forward. I'm sure its play rate will increase a little bit after this weekend, but I'll be excited to see if Gouging Fire continues to do well in the future. In top 4, we have another Miraidon here. This Miraidon list is similar to Azul's. It doesn't have the 16 Lightning, though. It looks like it plays the second copy of the Forest Seal Stone, and then it plays a different Magnemite, but does have the 15 Lightning in the deck over the 16 that Azul played in there. But yeah, another Miraidon top 4. And then top 4, we had a Cloth Tropicos deck. In fact, fun little stat, this is the highest placing Budew deck in the tournament, right? Budew was kind of the menace of the format. Everyone's hyping up Budew. And, Budew didn't end up winning Merida. And I'm sure, that could change. But, yeah, we do see this Cloth Tropicos deck doing well. This is a pretty funny deck, just utilizing the whole Cloth Tropicos engine with the poison package. Having the Budew now in the deck makes the deck a lot stronger because now you have item lock that does more damage with the poison. So now the Budew's hitting even higher numbers, which is a lot more scarier. Budew doing 10 damage sometimes isn't really that big of a deal. But when Budew's doing upwards of, 60 damage plus a turn with poison and everything and biting Mochi, that's when things are going to get a little bit more scarier, and that's when the Budew actually becomes a bit more of a threat. I think this list actually is looking better going into EUIC, especially with Miraidon probably going to be a lot more popular for EUIC. We'll talk about that in a future video, but good chance Miraidon ends up being the second most played deck at EUIC. I could see it happening. We'll have to see what happens in the next couple weeks. But yeah, this deck does have a decent Miraidon matchup, mainly because you have Cloth in the deck. Tropicos isn't bad either, especially if Miraidon's not playing the whatchamacallit, the Zapdos. Tropicos becomes an even better attacker. The Cloth, obviously, is just kind of the best thing in the deck. You can kill their Pikachu because you can go through the ability with the poison. This deck is just insane. It has all these big pop-off turns with the poisons and everything, and the Budew being a really efficient attacker is really good. I mean, pretty powerful archetype, and I think we might see more of this Cloth Tropicos deck going into EUIC. It's definitely possible that does happen because this deck definitely is very powerful, and don't sleep on it for sure. Don't sleep on it. And with Miraidon being more popular, this deck might be even better going forward. We'll have to see on that one. And yeah, we did have a Dragapult Dusknoir in top 8. It didn't do as well in the top 8 as I thought. There was a few in asymmetrical cut, which unfortunately we aren't able to see the full asim cut here. I think asim was 14, 15 people or whatever. It was a pretty big asymmetrical cut. And there was a few Dragapults in there. I know Brent Tonneson was playing Dragapult too. He was an asim, but Aiden Koos was the highest placing Dragapult player in the tournament. I think actually Aiden and Brent were playing the exact same 60. But yeah, highest placing Dragapult list here. It's got the Budew, it's got the Lances, the 3-1-2 Dusknoir line, so a lot more heavier on the Dusknoir, but really trying to capitalize on that Budew slowdown turn, where then you can kind of go off with the Dusknoir, the Dragapult, and just have an insane board wipe turn. Has Temple Sinnoh as a stadium in the deck to try to stop Lugia a little bit more. It's pretty simple, Dragapult 60, what we've been seeing right now, and I'm sure we'll see more Dragapult going forward. I think actually out of the 3 decks that I mentioned, the Gardevoir, Lugia, Dragapult, that Miraidon was trying to feast on, I think Dragapult probably has the best Miraidon matchup, just because if you can stabilize, usually against Dragapult, or against Miraidon with Dragapult, Dragapult can usually set up some really big combo turns with Phantom Dive, where you can knock out multiple Pokemon at once. So Dragapult's still probably really well positioned for UIC. Honestly, I'm not going to lie, it's still probably going to be the best deck for EUIC, or at the very least, the most played deck at EUIC. I'm still going to predict that. We'll talk about that, again, in a future video, but Dragapult's still really strong right now. And like I said, out of all the decks that Miraidon was trying to beat this weekend, Dragapult probably has at least the best matchup into Miraidon. Out of those 3 decks, it probably has the best chance of still surviving that Iron Hands pressure early on. So I think Dragapult's still really well positioned, and maybe in not doing so well in Merida, or, not doing as well as it could have, I guess, could be a sign that Dragapult, might be more slept on, or whatever. Actually, I don't think that's going to happen, but you get my point, right? We have another Miraidon top 8. Half the top 8 was Miraidon, folks. Miraidon had a banner of a weekend. This build also might actually be the same one we saw. Yeah, it's the same list. Raphael, my boy Raph, played it. Same list as Leandro here. So really cool stuff. Happy to see Raph in the top 8 again. Hit Raph at LEIC last year, so really cool opponent. So I'm just happy to see him do well. Really cool stuff. And yeah, Miraidon looking really good. Half the top 8 was Miraidon. But of course, we had Michael Davidson in top 8 with Gardevoir. Really cool stuff to see. Gardevoir is definitely still good. Does have a awkward Miraidon matchup, I guess. But we see Michael's list here. Did have some interesting inclusions that we hadn't really seen in Gardevoir in quite a while. For starters, his ace spec is Hero's Cape, not Secret Box, not Unfair Stamp, not Hyper Roma, Hero's Cape. That's a card we have not seen in a very long time in Gardevoir, which is kind of strange to see, Hero's Cape over Bravery Charm. But Hero's Cape is kind of cool because you see Michael's list. He's not playing Drifloon. He's opting for Triple Monkey. He's got the Cresselia, the Screamtail, so a little bit more spread approach, and then has the Mimikyu and the Mawile in the deck to be a little bit more disruptive on top of the Spiritomb. So it's a little bit more of a different take on Gardevoir, right? There's no Drifloon. It's not just like a Drifloon deck where you just Drifloon a bunch of times. There's a lot more tactical plays you make with the deck due to the counts in the deck. And the Hero's Cape is very interesting ace spec, but it's, decent. Jamming Tower wasn't really as popular. There was a few vacuums in the top 8 from what I've seen, but not so much Jamming Tower. And I'm sure, Hero's Cape probably got a lot of value in this weekend. Can be really good with Gardevoir EX. You can put it on any of your Pokemon, to be honest with you. Like, Screamtail becomes an even stronger attacker with Hero's Cape, where Screamtail can take knockers out of nowhere. Hero's Cape can be really good on the Mimikyu to make it more tankier. More of a tank or whatever. I mean, the Monkey Dory Mimikyu engine is really strong in general, and this deck obviously can take advantage of it, especially if decks do not have an answer to Mimikyu. Some decks might even have an answer to Mawile. Mawile can be really good against Miraidon. If Miraidon's not playing any switch cards, a lot of the time you can literally just win the game by going Mawile and then trapping the thing in the active spot, and then they're just like, oh, I actually have no way to get around the Mawile. Oh, I guess that's just GG's then. And then obviously Spiritomb can be really good against Miraidon because you can shut off their Raikou Sleep-Footed, then also the Luminion can get shut off, which can be decent in some situations. But yeah, we'll see if this is going to be the optimal Gardevoir list going forward, if this is the one that everyone's going to be playing for UIC. I'm sure this build of Guardy is probably a little bit harder to play than like the Drifloon builds because there is more going on. There's more different plays being made with like the different attackers. So I'm sure this probably won't be as popular as like Unfair Stamp Guardy will be, but I'm sure we'll still see Gardevoir do well. Again, only one in top 8. This also did not play Budew, keep in mind. No Budew in this Guardy list, so really just 2 Budew decks in top 8 from the looks of it. And then to round out the top 8, of course, we once again had another Miraidon playing the double Forest Seal Stone, 15 energy. Did have the Zapdos in here. This one did have the Zapdos in deck. Again, Zapdos is sometimes important for Miraidon to get those higher numbers, like the Miraidon being able to one-shot the Entei or Gouging Fire would have been good, and then obviously Zapdos is good with Iron Hands because you can use it to one-shot stuff like Duraludon. But Archaludon is probably not going to be that popular right now. I mean, didn't make top 8 or anything. We'll have to see the highest placing Archaludon list, and the highest placing other lists, obviously, in the tournament too. The other decks to look at, like maybe what Charizard deck did well. There was any Zarpult, any Lost Box, stuff like that. I'm excited to look at all that when we get the remaining of the day 2 decks. But there you go. That is the top 8 at Merida. The main takeaway is Miraidon did really good. Big Basics in general did good. The Cloth Tropicos deck, Miraidon, Gouging Fire. There was only 2, like, quote-unquote, Budew slow decks in the top 8. Dragapult and Gardevoir, and that's it. So, very interesting results here. I think the results will be different for EYC. Like, I'm sure Dragapult will probably still be very popular, and Guardy will still probably be fine, too. It can adapt to Miraidon, potentially. It's just kind of how it's going to have to go. We'll have to see where the rest of this format goes heading up to EYC. We'll have to look at the online tournament results eventually in another video, and then we'll look at the rest of the day 2 here, because there might have been some interesting stuff in day 2. Also, I want to look at the rest of the asymmetrical cut, because there were other decks in Asim that I wanted to look at here. We'll talk about all of those, of course, when we do eventually get to the rest of the day 2 decks in a future video here, probably tomorrow, hopefully on the channel. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video here, leave a like on the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. Again, we're on the road to 21,000 subs. Let me know what you think of the top 8 here. What are your thoughts on the top 8 at Merida? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'm interested to hear all that stuff, and I'll catch y'all later. Bye-bye.